Last Sunday, in our special report on migrant fishermen, we looked at the abuses that happen on Taiwan's distant water fishing boats. Today, we meet people who are trying to change how the industry treats its foreign workers. One major tuna trader has set up an online platform that allows abused workers to file complaints anonymously. Another fleet owner in Pingtung County has installed unlimited Wi-Fi so that fishermen can make video calls to their family. Tonight, in part 2 of Vulnerable on the High Seas, we see how the industry is striving to transform. We also explore what the government can do to provide support.
Pingtung County's Donggang fishing port started life in the Japanese colonial era when commercial fishing boats would berth there. Fishing boats large and small would dock to resupply, and the port bustled with daily activity. This 400-odd-ton tuna fishing boat has been operating for 30 years now. Its cramped space and old equipment are common problems plaguing a large number of fishing boats. After a quick resupply that keeps it in port for a week, this boat will head off for waters west of Australia. It will be at sea for 8 months. With more than 20 people crammed together on a small boat for work, everyday life can be a real test of character.
往街协啊，就是我们做干部的就把他们叫过来，把他讲给他开啊。
Arguments are unavoidable. We just call the two sides in to talk it over. Sometimes bad weather causes people to be more irritable, or issues at home might influence their mood, making them grumpy.
Adrift on the open sea, people are like kites with broken strings. For fishermen working far from home, internet access is a human rights indicator identified by the international community.
Oh, Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Also, you have Wi-Fi in the ocean, so you can FaceTime your family.
Yes, ma'am.
You can call them.
Not calling, only message, ma'am. 一个礼拜给他。
We give them 5 minutes per week, or however long it is, so they can get in touch with family.
At Taiwan's fishing ports, Southeast Asian faces are a common sight. They are the nuts and bolts that hold the fishing industry together. However, under the current labor system, they are a marginalized group. The industry uses a dual-track system for employment, which has long been criticized. Those aboard vessels in nearby waters are considered to be domestically employed, are under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Labor, and are subject to the Labor Standards Act. However, those fishing in distant waters are treated as overseas employees, are under the jurisdiction of the Council of Agriculture's Fisheries Agency, and are hired under overseas employment permits.
The situation is worse for the workers on these distant water vessels. What's the difference? First, they don't have the Labor Standards Act and the protections that act as guarantees. Second, they don't have basic minimum salaries. At present, on Taiwan-registered fishing vessels, the lowest monthly salary is $450 but that's just with boats registered in Taiwan. On those not registered in Taiwan, there are no standards at all.
这个劳检啊，这个工作安全啊。
When it comes to labor inspections, work safety, and the employment of intermediaries at tech factories and for caregivers, those things are under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Labor. Why is it that when it comes to the fishing industry, those things are handled by the Fisheries Agency? The authority of the Fisheries Agency is not as high as that of the Labor Ministry. It doesn't have as large of an annual budget and not as much manpower, but it has to manage something as large in scope as distant waters fishing.
According to government statistics, the number of migrant workers employed on Taiwanese fishing boats, including those registered to China, reached a high of 20,138 people in 2020. Taiwan's fishing industry has been divided into sub-jurisdictions, creating a great many blind spots.
应该要主责的劳动部看起来很消极。
The Ministry of Labor, which should be in charge of migrant workers' employment, has been very passive. Meanwhile, the Fisheries Agency, which should not be in charge, or you could say lacks the capability and resources to be in charge, has been very active on the issue. But behind its frequent actions, there is a lack of communication. So over the past 2 or 3 years, whenever issues with migrant fishermen come up, such as cases involving flag of convenience vessels, a number of disagreements have emerged. It's a problem with no end in sight.
I've always said that Taiwan should only manage as many boats as it has quotas for. It seems like Taiwan has too many boats now. Too many boats fishing for tuna. With so many boats, the expenses are too high, so you can't recover the capital you invest.
海上奴工，
海上奴工，
血汗海鲜，
血汗海鲜。
其实强迫劳动
Forced labour and the depletion of fishery resources are actually in a causal relationship. It's a vicious circle.
Whether in near or distant waters, what often happens is that when working hours are very long, fishers will try to keep getting catches. They will fish non-stop and try to stuff their boats full.
Over the years, Taiwanese fishing boats have branched out, no longer fishing in just the Pacific, but also in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. However, the plight of migrant fishers on Taiwanese boats has always been in the backdrop. In September 2020, a U.S. Department of Labor blacklist for products made with forced and child labor listed Taiwanese fisheries products for the first time.
台湾的话就是强迫劳动
Taiwan has forced labour, and that forced labour is in its fishing industry. Taiwan's distant water fish catches involve forced labour. This not only affects Taiwan's international reputation, but also indirectly affects Taiwan's ability to sell fish in the US market. Because who wants to buy forced labour commodities?
FCF Company Limited, which acquired US-based tuna cannery Bumblebee Foods in 2020, is one of the largest tuna products manufacturers in the world. FCF works with over 1,000 fishing boats worldwide. In its first interview in 50 years of operation, FCF addressed the US's blacklisting of Taiwanese fishing vessels.
The way we handle contingencies is to not limit ourselves to addressing issues on 1 or 2 boats. Our hope is to assist suppliers systematically so that those who work with them can operate in accordance with international regulations.
It's up to our auditor's judgment, their assessment of a boat's performance in terms of its social responsibility. If we see a situation in which a boat is not conforming to that responsibility, we will require it to make improvements.
Through an assessment platform, the company monitors the behavior of boats that it works with. In April 2021, FCF and the PCT Seamen and Fishermen Service Center established an online platform for the submission of grievances, allowing industry workers to submit complaints anonymously through scanning a QR code.
Traditionally, complaints are voiced through the broker or the employer, but that tends to put pressure on the worker with the complaint. Since making complaints directly is relatively inconvenient and results in extra pressure, doing it online through this platform is much better, since it goes through a third party. When our service center receives a complaint, we express it on behalf of the worker, which reduces the pressure on them.
Taiwan's fishing industry is being called upon to transform. In the past, boat owners needed only think about the price their catches would fetch at market. But now the international market is scrutinizing the hidden costs of these catches. Human and labor rights are factors that matter, factors pushing the industry to shift from being price-centered to value-centered.
现在我的船有1艘在密克罗尼西亚跟巴布新几内亚的第1公海，然后另外有3艘在这个库克群岛的上方这个。
One of those pushing for transformation of the industry is third-generation Pingtung fishing boat operator Chen Wen-shen.
现在这里。
This right here is our break room for the boat's crew. The height of the cabin is 190 centimeters, and the width is enough to meet the government's requirement of 70 centimeters.
The newest boats also have air conditioning, fans, filter systems for drinking water, and even leisure facilities. Aside from this equipment, Chen has also installed what is a first on Taiwanese fishing boats: unlimited Wi-Fi for crew to use when th're not working.
我进 会去牵这套，就是讲你有拄着问题，你当下咱用吃到饱的咧讲的时阵。
I install these things on the boat. If the crew encounters problems, they can use the phone as long as they like. 1 hour, a half hour, they can even video chat with family members because when they can see their family, that puts them in a different mood.
你开视讯一下，我紧你举出外口落滚遐翕一个来。我公司遮有美视的记者，讲要来访问你啦，讲你鱼仔哪会遐咬掠啦。
With Wi-Fi on board, even when thousands of kilometers from home out at sea, family is never far away.
在作业。
哇，这在第一公海。
第一公海那边。
Internet access at sea costs nearly 60,000 NT per month and over 700,000 NT per year. Chen has been called a model fleet captain, but the pressure on him is great.
It's true that such high fees are not affordable to everyone. I would also like to see Wi-Fi on every boat, but as it is, you don't always earn money these days, and Wi-Fi is an extra cost. The government must help us, owners. They should consider helping us so that we, owners, can survive.
比如说它的这些洗澡盥洗的设备。
You need things like shower and washroom facilities, and you need a cabin of a minimum size. These things are guaranteed under basic human and labour rights. But right now, the Taiwanese government is not enforcing these international conventions, these minimum standards.
这些比较老旧的船体它现在在国际人权的要求底下
These old boats, if you want them brought up to international standards, you need to give them time to slowly make improvements. But in the process of improving them, I hope the government can provide some assistance.
To improve the image of Taiwan's fishing industry, the Executive Yuan plans to implement the International Labour Organization's Work in Fishing Convention. It will require that salaries, work environment, and maritime communication all conform to international standards. Using modern technology, it will aim to make life at sea more transparent.
这个都是我们船现在目前每一艘船后面的大部分都有安装监视器。
These are all our boats. Now, on every boat, we must install a camera at the back. But as for how long each camera must record, that remains the biggest issue.
You see, I am also pushing for this, for installing cameras on each boat, so that there's a complete record of what goes on. If it's all recorded, I can see if the crew is being paid for the overtime they are asked to do. If you don't look after the crew, then why would they listen to the captain, right? They might even strike.
Human and labor rights are universal values, and this should be no different at sea, activists say. As a major player in the global fishing industry, Taiwan is closely watched by the international community. It has a duty to create a win-win situation for both labor and capital, and to ensure the sustainability of both the industry and our oceans.